My name is Liz Tomaszewski, and I am a member of the President's Task Force on Sustainability, who's sponsoring today's event. Some of you may know that WPI performed very well on some key national sustainability measurements over the past year, specifically the Green Report Card and ASHE's STAR Survey. What you may not know, however, is why we did so well. I think we keep it a very good secret. We're here today as experts in various areas that impact sustainability to tell you about what we're doing on campus to make our campus a more sustainable one. So I'd like to introduce our team of expert panelists, starting with Ben Thompson, who is Associate VP for IT, Joe Kriskauskas, Resident District Manager, Dining Services, Terry Pellerin, Associate Director, Buildings and Events, Dave Messier, Bill Grudzinski, Lead Operating Engineer. Yes, switched on me. Dave Messier, Manager, Environmental and Occupational Safety. Fred Hart, Professor, Civil and Environmental Engineering. Jim Doyle, Department Head and Associate Professor, Social Science and Policy Studies. And the person who is not here yet, who would have been first, is Fred DeMauro, Assistant VP for Facilities. He will be with us in a bit. He got held up. So with that, we will start with Ben. May I ask you, please, to hold your questions till the end?
Okay. Good afternoon. Glad you made it. I want to talk to you about what we do in information technology for sustainability. The first area I'll talk about is acquisition. We've been mindful on acquisition for quite some time now, starting when flat panels were brand new and very expensive. We did an assessment relative to total cost of ownership and the values for our earth, et cetera, and were able to present a case that the administration accepted that it was worth spending the money up front. And we would basically have a fiscally responsible in the long term. And so we've moved ahead with that. In our current days, we are now and when we look for equipment, we look at Energy Star ratings and EPEAT ratings, which are electronic product environmental assessment tool. And it does ratings not only by the energy, but also the whole life cycle of the equipment, from its acquisition of materials, how it's built, shipped, and where it ends up at the end. The next area is in recycling. We have lots of equipment on campus, and equipment has different needs. For instance, in our labs, we tend to have high-end equipment that gets recycled quickly because it has to be able to do the latest programs for all of our students and whatever the academic needs are. So that equipment often gets recycled to a second use at WPI for office equipment, supporting work-study positions, labs that normally wouldn't be supported, so they go through the second life there. Once we feel that it's not worth putting in the field at WPI, we have a close relationship with the technical high school in Worcester, who takes a lot of our equipment from desktop servers and printers. They refurbish them and ship them out to the various public schools in town. So we're also doing some community support while taking appropriate actions of disposing of our equipment. And finally, there is some equipment that just has no value to anybody at this point, and we work with facilities to do responsible recycling, and they'll talk a little bit more about that. Currently, we have several projects that we're working on. The first is the power management of the domain PCs. A lot of PCs get turned on or left on all day or all night, and we're working out so that we can shut down PCs. Like when staff members go home at night, we'll power them down to a sleep mode. We can wake them up to do updates in the middle of the night, so we won't take away their productive time in the morning when they come into work, put them back to sleep, and when they come in, they wake them up and they continue on. We're doing something similar with the projection systems, where people leave those on, and at times people have left them on all night, and we will shut them off at midnight so that they will shut off and not only save the power, but you wouldn't believe how expensive the bulbs may be. We're doing a lot of virtualization of servers in both our Linux environment and in our Windows environment, and this gets maximum use of the compute power. It makes it a little easier to manage, so you get payback not only by being sustainable, but you can get payback in how you run your operation. And Finally, the last area is we would like to promote reduced printing. It's hard to say you're not going to print around WPI, but we have been buying printers that are all duplex for a number of years now, so I suspect pretty much every printer out there is duplex. We like to encourage people to think about what they need for printers. There's a lot of printers. We have 400 and some odd printers on campus, which is really too many for the number of people that we have to serve. We're trying to encourage central units. You may have to walk a bit, but that central unit prints. It is a fusing unit on all day as compared to if you have 10 of your own, you're running that fusing unit to keep that printer ready all day long and burning away power. And also, do you really need to print it in the first place? Can we work more paperless and pass things around by PDF and things like that? So I guess that's my sort of push for all of you at this point. Think before you print and do your piece too. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Kraskowskis. I'm the Director of Dining Services here at WPI and have been here for about 15 years. I want to talk a little bit about sustainability and green operations as it relates to dining. On the screens behind me are a list of the initiatives that we are currently doing in all or most of our facilities on campus. I want to talk a little bit about a couple of them because they're a little bit special to me and a little bit special to WPI. First one, Project Clean Plate, is actually, we should start, just back up a little bit. WPI and Chartwell's are a contract relationship. Chartwell's is a food service company, so we're not WPI employees. Chartwell's is also part of the Compass Group. They are the sister ship, so to speak. And I bring that point up because I think it's important to understand that as Compass Group, as part of Compass Group in the United States, Compass has $8 billion in revenue across the different divisional lines, which include Canteen, Restaurant Associates, Flick Independent Schools, and even Wolfgang Puck Catering. So when Compass Group, who is a very proactive company when it comes to green initiatives, decides to make a move in an area, there's significant movement in that initiative. When we decide to go zero trans fat free on all of our oils, as a company, we have a major impact, much like a McDonald's would have if they were to make an initiative from the green perspective. On a couple of these, on Project Clean Plate in particular, about 12 years ago at WPI, we created an initiative where we involved student groups, it was fraternities, to help us try to get students to eat what's on their plate, to take it. Everyone knows your eyes can be bigger than your stomach. And students would work with us to ask students through signage at stations to understand that they can always go back to a food station and get more, but by taking more food than they need, bringing it back to their plate, and inevitably throwing it away is not necessarily a sustainable practice. Any student, when we first rolled this out, students that would come to the tray return when they were done with their tray and come back up to drop it off, if they had eaten all of their items, everything on their plate was gone, they were rewarded, and they were entered into a raffle. And we would actually weigh our waste at the beginning of a term. We normally do it in August. Get a benchmark for how much food is actually being wasted per person, and then set goals and initiatives to drop a 10% or 20% reduction. The first year that we did it, we actually came up with about 6/10 of a pound of waste per student. Now, waste can mean chicken bones, it can mean ice, it can be anything that's on that plate. And we were able to get a 60% reduction in our first term by using students to remind people that if they came up and their tray wasn't empty, they would give them the message, you can always go back. They were rewarded and entered into a raffle if they did have a clean plate. And if they didn't, they sort of got a friendly message from their peers that, hey, this is the right thing to do. And what we would do from those savings is we would actually split the savings of food that would actually be going into the trash. We would do an incentive for our local initiatives, whether it be the local charitable food donation locations, or several, Rachel's Table included. But we'd also take some of those savings and we'd make a raffle, like an iPod or They change over the years. Generally, it's electronics here at WPI. So students would have something to gain in it. And that, it was so popular here at WPI as a pilot program, Chartwell's instituted it as a program across the entire country. It's actually one of our selling mechanisms when we approach different clients about what we do as a green company. So Project Clean Pay is actually very unique to WPI, and it is now across all of the country for Chartwells. Another one that's actually interesting is cage-free eggs. Another initiative that took place at WPI before it became a company initiative. One of our students had approached us one day and asked if there was availability of cage-free eggs. Thought it was something we should take a look at. We actually looked into it. Initially, it was more money for a cage-free egg than it was for a regular egg, but we decided to make that switch. And probably about a year later, I don't think it was related to what we were doing at WPI, but a year later, Chartwell's instituted cage-free eggs across the entire entire USA. And when we do something like that as a company, Chartwell's a Compass Group, we have some significant movement in what things happen. I actually have a picture that I'll hand around. We are promoting the use of local products. Most recently, this past September, we did an It Takes You local promotion, Eat Local promotion, where our food service chefs and managers went out to the local farmers and spoke to them about what they're making and actually placed orders for our fall term. And subsequently, on last September, we did our first farmers market here on campus. It had a significant turnout, which we plan to continue that as those products become available. So I'll pass this around. Then lastly, I just want to speak a little bit to the most recent CIW tomato partnership. This is the most recent item that's come out from Compass Group that I was aware of. And what it is this is guided by justice and fairness. We are proud to partner with the Coalition of Immokalee Workers to improve the working conditions of agricultural workers who harvest fresh tomatoes grown in Florida. The Immokalee region in the heart of Florida provides 95% of all U.S. grown tomatoes eaten from October to June. We will now pay an additional 1.5 cents per pound for all the tomatoes purchased annually, with 1 cent per pound being passed on directly to the harvesters. And I'll pass these out. That is a picture of what we're doing in dining services for sustainability at WPI. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Terry Pellerin, and before it was in vogue, Project Clean Plate, I experienced it as a young child, As the youngest boy in the family, I got the 10 pounds of potatoes that was left in the pot, and no meat, as my brothers tell me. I'm speaking today about recycling, what we do here at WPI. And it's probably not much different than any other college or university. However, our recycling program began in the early 90s with the initiative of WPI students. They did an IQP on recycling where very diligent students for several months went through all the trash that the custodians pulled out of the buildings and actually sorted through the trash and weighed the trash and figured out what was recyclable and what wasn't. Pretty impressive initiative because, nowadays everything recycle. Back then, you really didn't hear about recycling at all. But these students were on the cutting edge. They started our program. They did the program themselves and ran it themselves for 2 years, their junior and senior year. After they graduated, the facilities department saw that there was some merit in doing this and reduction of waste in our waste stream, and we continued the program. As the program grew and grew and grew, and local and state and federal regulations changed, the program just kept blooming into more things, and more things, to what we have right now. And that's listed above. The interesting thing that we do at WPI also is furniture recycling. We started that About 6 years ago, through a partnership, we belong to a group called the Institutional Recycling Network. They're out of New Hampshire. There's about 125 colleges and universities that are members of this group. The Institute Recycling Network goes out and markets our commodities on the open market, so our cardboard, office paper, and negotiates pricing for these 125 colleges and universities. They also do extensive research on the companies that we do business with, like our computers and our electronics. I'm sure folks have seen the 60 Minutes program on these recycling programs and all the electronics going to third world countries and in China, and people scavenging and just leaving parts on the side of the road. These companies are extensively researched by the Institutional Recycling Network. They also periodically will spot check and follow the loads of recycling to their end source. They'll go into waste companies, Waste Management, Casella, different companies that we do business with, and they'll walk in unannounced and audit their facility to assure that the products that we're sending them are being recycled properly. But the other interesting is furniture recycling. IRN, Institutional Recycling Network, started this program about 6 years ago. And with this program, we take our old furniture that we used to dispose of in various ways, dumpsters, landfills, burning, whatever. And this furniture is taken, put in container cars, and shipped across the country, across the world, and it's reused by different agencies globally. So, for example, we were doing some renovations in classrooms at the time Katrina had struck, and they were rebuilding down there. We sent about 250 tablet armchairs down to New Orleans for the schools down there. They were making these kind of outdoor schools for the children. So a bunch of our tablet armchairs went down there. Other stuff goes on container cars and is shipped out of the country. But the furniture is all being recycled, and they work through aid agencies to make sure that this furniture goes to good use. So that's all I have for now. Thank you.
My name is Dave Messier. I'm the Environmental and Occupational Safety Manager for WPI. And one of my responsibilities is hazardous waste management. WPI generates waste, hazardous waste, chemical waste in particular, in our research and teaching labs, in our machine shops, in our facilities operations. And you can see in the second bullet item the various types of materials that are considered hazardous waste that we have to manage. You can see in 2007 a very large volume, and then it tailed off in 08 and 09 to more normal range. The cause of the 2007 was what everybody left behind when they left for Gateway. When all the 26 research groups left the main campus over there, they left behind a lot of material that had to be managed. So that number was obviously quite large and quite expensive to get rid of. In our hazardous waste management plan in section 12, there's what we call a waste minimization program, which includes substitution. I work with faculty, investigators, lab instructors to try and substitute less hazardous materials. We have gone to some micro-scale experiments, in particular the sophomore lab series in chemistry department. We have an active mercury thermometer exchange. We're trying to get mercury off our campus, so we're slowly getting to that point. We certainly have inventory and purchasing control programs that help with minimizing waste generation, as well as redistribution. Sometimes a research group will give me materials, that can be reused in another group. And we also train our generators on how to properly manage their waste so that we try and minimize in that way as well. So we try and minimize, but when we do generate, we have a corporate partner in Triumph Environmental. They work with us at recycling. You can see a couple of waste streams in the third bullet point, the second bullet point from the bottom, about waste recycling of oils and glycol products as well as mixed organic solvents. Let me leave you with one thought, that all of you, I would dare say, or most of you have basements or cellars in your home or apartment, and you may have hazardous waste down there. Don't bring it here, but every community had a household hazardous waste collection day. I looked on the Worcester website, for instance, and I haven't set the date yet for the city, but whatever town or city you live in, keep your eye out for those opportunities to turn in your hazardous materials. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bill Grzinski. I'm the chief engineer in the power plant. I've been at WPI for 24 years, and what we've been working on recently is energy options, trying to reduce energy on the campus. And we did a complete campus audit of all our buildings, properties, and peripheral properties. And what we've come up with is a study to start with and see if there's some opportunities that we can take and actually reduce some of the energy in some of these areas. One is electrical energy. We went around and looked at all the lighting, talked about replacing light fixtures, lighting, maybe putting in some occupancy sensors in the classrooms and meeting rooms. We talked about water usage. We went through all the buildings, showers, bathrooms, all the lavatories and stuff, and we checked out the sinks and the toilets and stuff and talked about putting low-flow aerator units in to reduce the water usage, along with some flushometer valves in the toilets. Now, a lot of this stuff here that we've talked about, we're looking at trying to, maybe use some of the incentives from the utility companies and, take it as a benefit from the university and maybe get some of this done. We also went into looking at cogeneration, maybe generating our own electricity. Hopefully we can go into a next study with that. We'll have to do an initial study on that to see if it's actually feasible at this time. They think there's a possibility, and there's some good incentives out there. The next step would be a feasibility study to see if it's even doable. We also walked around a lot of the rooftops, and with that being said, we were trying to look at some possibilities of solar energy to maybe use. We have Daniels Hall, Ellsworth Apartments, the campus center, and Gordon Library with some good rooftop space with some possibilities of solar power. So that being said, it's in the beginning stages, and we did the complete audit, which was a great thing. It's a good base to start, and now from there we need to branch out and see where we want to go with it and what kind of incentives we might be able to receive and how we can move forward. So, thank you.
It's always a challenge to get up here without falling down. Here we are. My name is Fred Hart. I'm a professor of civil and environmental engineering. And I'm here to talk about how academia is involved with sustainability. Well, almost all departments here, not only engineering, but almost all departments here have an involvement with sustainability. I know about civil and environmental engineering more than the other departments, so I'll be focusing a little bit more on civil and environmental engineering, but really, people that are thinking of mechanical, electrical, chemical, you're all in the same soup that we are. You're all involved with sustainability, and I'll try to explain why. Well, first of all, this is one of those win-win situations that very rarely you find when students and general population have an interest in something that's also has a high potential for career opportunities. And this is rare. A lot of times people will come in and they, I want to focus on such and such in my studies and go off and do such and such. And by the time they're seniors, they go off to do such and such, and they find out, well, there's no one hiring anyone to do such and such. But sustainability, it turns out that, that's something that right now has a lot of career potential. So I've been talking to a lot of companies, took a cross-country trip last summer, talked to a lot of different engineering companies, and they all would say, great opportunities here. And I had a seminar class last year, all the speakers, great opportunity. If they know how to do this, great opportunity. So that's why I say, this is something that definitely is a good idea for students, and I'm happy that they have the interest. I doubt that we gave them the interest. At the same time, a third item that makes this a win-win-win situation is the more I became involved with the concept of sustainable design, the more I started to realize that this is something that we as civil engineering, and I'm sure the other engineering departments too, have been doing for a long time. Imagine when I was a student. That's how long we've been doing it. So it's been a long, long time. For example, in civil engineering, well, we find that globally, if you look at energy use, which is always a big impact to our sustainable future, is mostly for buildings, not transportation, and it's usually for cooling buildings. Okay. So how do you design a building so that the cooling is more efficient? I mean, maybe there's new fancy generation systems, but that's not what we would focus on. We would focus on how do you design these buildings, how do you put features into the building so that the cooling isn't as dramatic as it would be, in the old glass-covered steel things, with can't open the windows, and it would be a furnace inside, so therefore they crank up the air conditioner and cool off the building, and so that's not very efficient, is it? And then you have all these computers in the building generating heat, not to mention people generating heat. So you can see how there's a lot of variables associated with just the building concept itself that would influence a sustainable design. Let's see, another concept that in engineering, well, what kind of materials do you use? I mean, obviously, would you go to China to get bamboo, to bring it here, to have sustainable material? Or would you just go and get some indigenous material locally and use that? And just think of the transportation. So there's a holistic kind of a view that one has to take. Now, I included the other engineering departments in this slide, not to exclude the sciences, but you think I don't know too much about the other engineering field. Imagine how little I know about chemistry and physics and those things. So I'm sure they're involved, but I'm not really sure how. Mechanical engineering, one thing I've found an awful lot of involvement with just the HVAC, which is a big part of your building design. So that's why, when I had the seminar, I'd bring in mechanical engineers and they'd talk about that, and heat pumps and wind energy and that kind of thing. Electrical engineering, well, obviously the solar power generation. And then the power distribution, very important because you have a lot of efficiency losses just over the transmission lines. What's the best way? What's the smart grid, or intelligent grid, or whatever they're terming it. So this is something that obviously electrical engineers are involved. Chemical engineers, I put HVAC. I think I should have put down fuel cells, things of that nature. But there's a lot of chemical engineering activity too. So now the big ones is just because I know more about it than the other engineering. The civil engineering, I mentioned building. So how do you design a building? How do you get all the players together to determine how we're going to get this green building, constructed? LEED certification. I'm sure you've heard these kind of terms. So that's civil engineering involved in there. Geothermal is not necessarily tapping into these hot springs where you have volcanoes coming up. When you have super hot temperature. Geothermal can just be 10 feet down. 10 feet down anywhere here is about 70 degrees. So you take that heat and then you put it into a heat pump. There's mechanical engineering, and then you can, create much warmer. Or you can use the same in the summer. You can use the same thing for cooling. Okay? So it's a heat pump. So it's a BTU thing, and it's physics and mechanical engineering, thermal that I had a hard time with. And that's why I'm civil engineer. You see? So, and then of course how you design towns and the roads and et cetera. And of course environmental engineering. Let's not forget environmental engineering, which is a part of civil engineering, and we have an awful lot of involvement there. So now, in particular, courses that one might take that are offered by the Civil Engineering Department, I put ES 2800. That's really a fundamental sustainability class for, I think, second-year students mostly. I'm creating a new, I did create a new sustainable design course, 4000X. X means it's experimental. Means I'm not sure exactly what I'm doing yet, but we'll have fun if you take the class. It starts next year in C term. And CE 591 is a seminar class that I had for sustainable design to bring in experts in and record them so that I could use that for later use in my classes. Project Center, Stantec is a international company that I developed a project center with, and most of our projects have been focused with sustainable design. Panama Center is a project center that Janine Plummer from the Civil Department developed. I'm sure they're involved there with sustainable design. And then I put down other courses. I just listed them all. And then projects, I said TNC, too numerous to count. And basically, when you really get down to it, civil engineering, almost all the faculty in the department have some involvement with sustainable design. So you can't go wrong by talking to us. And of course, at the same time, not to leave out my colleagues, you can't go wrong by talking to faculty in the other departments too. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jim Doyle. I'm Associate Professor of Psychology and Head of the Social Science and Policy Studies Department here. I'm going to talk about the Environmental Studies program, which I'm involved in. I'm not the director of it. The director is Rob Kruger from IGSD. This is a relatively new program for WPI. It's 2 to 3 years old. It's a Bachelor of Arts degree. This is a highly interdisciplinary program. On our associated faculty, we have folks from my department, social science, from the IGSD, from humanities and arts, civil engineering, Fred's department, and biology and biotechnology. Our degree program, as you might expect, being situated here at WPI, has a very strong technical component. Our students study a lot of science and engineering and math and statistics, as well as social sciences and humanities. The program has a deliberate focus on communication skills so that our graduates can communicate with people from a variety of disciplines. So somebody who graduates from this program who's not an engineering major should be able to go talk to Fred about some of the civil engineering involved in an environmental issue or problem, and Fred should come away impressed that they know enough engineering and have.
I'm always impressed by the kids here.
Yeah, and but also know the social science and the policy side of things as well. We do our best to practice what we preach in our courses and in our program, and so I just listed a couple of examples here. One of the environmental studies courses I teach, the students do a behavior change project. They do their carbon footprint. They analyze their own environmental behavior, and they spend about a month using psychological techniques for behavior change to go out and change their behavior and keep track of their progress for a month and do their carbon footprint again and see what impact they have made. Another example of this is I started in my environmental class. I do this in all of my classes now, whether it's related to the environment or not. Have my students give them the opportunity to sign a sustainable classroom pledge. So it's a well-known psychological technique. People like to be consistent. So get them to agree to do something. Get them to agree to do it publicly. They like other people to know that they're consistent. So if you get people to make a public pledge, they're more likely to do it. So I ask them to do that. And the pledge in this case is to help us create a sustainable classroom environment. So I pledge, for example, to allow them to submit things electronically versus on paper. I pledge to cut down on paper use. I don't print out their syllabus for them. They can read it online. For example, I turn off most of the lights when I get to class and use the natural light like we have coming in the windows here. On the student side, they pledge to only bring reusable containers to class and cut down on paper use and so forth. A lot of our students do projects on the WPI campus and in the Worcester community. And another important aspect of WPI's education is the project centers. So there we have global project centers where students go to do their IQPs. Our students in environmental studies can go do their IQP and in some cases an MQP at one of these centers that have a safe sustainability theme, and some examples in Cape Town and Namibia and Copenhagen, Denmark, where students go and do projects related to clean water and renewable energy and sanitation and so forth. So in a nutshell, that's an environmental studies program. Feel free to talk to me. My office is downstairs on the other side of this building. If you're interested in it, or talk to Rob Kruger from the IGSD. Thanks.
Fred, would you like to do your lead building presentation next?
I'm Fred DeMauro, Assistant Vice President of Facilities, and WPI is founded on theory and practice, and what that means is Fred and Fred. Fred is theory and Fred is practice. Fred was talking about the concepts and theories of sustainability, and I'm the one that's responsible for building them. And LEED is a scorecard that is used. It was developed by the U.S. Green Building Council, and it certifies points on a 69-point system for certain features of different buildings, both the design of them, the construction of them, and the operation of them. And we'll go away. There we go. LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. It's broken down into 6 categories, and there are a number of points associated with each category for a total of 69 points. That is the most number of points you can receive. When the Bartlett Center was being designed, the Board of Trustees established that that building would be built to meet LEED certification. And there are different categories of LEED. 26 to 32 points is the base level of LEED, which is certified. 33 to 38 is silver, gold is 39 to 51, and platinum 52 to 69. And so our task for Bartlett was to build a LEED certified building, and certain things were affected in the design, and in fact, of the 14 points, Bartlett got 8 in the site category, 2 in the water efficiency, and so on, for a total of 29 points, which put it in the center of LEED certification. Then we went forward to build East Hall. And when East Hall was being designed, they wanted to up the ante. And so the requirement was that East Hall had to be designed to meet silver. And we went through the process with the design. And what normally happens is during the course of the project, you're providing paperwork to the U.S. Green Building Council on your documentation of as far as why you believe you've earned these number of points. The U.S. Green Building Council reviews them and says, okay, we'll give you this one. No, we don't think you've met the full intent of this one, so you're not going to get that one. So typically you apply for more knowing that you're not going to get them all, and you want to end up at a certain level. In the case of East Hall, we applied for 44, and surprisingly enough, we got every single point we applied for, which meant we exceeded the silver level of 38 and actually became a gold certified building, which was a great accomplishment for WPI. We're currently working on the design of the recreation center. Actually, the design is completed. It's out to bid now so that we can start construction next month, and we believe we have 33 points firm, and there's another 16 points that are kind of maybes. So sometime over the course of construction and by the end of the project, we'll be submitting somewhere between 33 to 49 points, and we feel fairly comfortable that we'll be, again, teetering in the silver to gold range. And some of those things, just to help you understand, Bartlett Center was built on a parking lot. We didn't remove green space, and since we didn't disturb the green space, that qualified for a point. In the recreation center, we're going to be capturing stormwater off the roof of the building and groundwater that's running around the foundation, and using that water, pumping it into the building to provide the makeup water for the cooling towers of the air conditioning system. Instead of using 800,000 gallons of fresh water a year, we're not going to be using any. Solar thermal, the recreation center is going to have solar thermal panels on the roof, which are going to be used to heat the pool water year-round. Normally, solar thermal isn't always cost-effective, but in our situation, because we have a pool, it made it very cost-effective because of the year-round heating of the pool. East Hall, the amount, the buildings that were demolished in order to build East Hall, and the parking lots that were demolished in order to build East Hall, 80% of all those construction materials that were removed from the site, the brick, the concrete, the steel from those buildings, was all pulled apart, recycled, and shipped out to other facilities. Even the asphalt was ground up to use to make new asphalt, so that all that stuff wasn't going to the landfill. Indoor air quality, having views, not using artificial light, maximizing the use of daylight in spaces is important. And actually in the recreation center, we're also going to be trialing fitness equipment that will generate electricity in order to illuminate the room that the equipment is in. So we're trying to get some innovation points associated with that. And that, in a nutshell, is the practice part of the theory.
We'll save the best for last. I talked earlier in the introduction about the fact that there are two national measurement systems for sustainability that we've used at WPI. And those two measurement systems are the STARS, ASHE's STARS Pilot Survey and the Sustainable Endowment Institute's Green Report Card. ASHE stands for the Association for Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. And their STARS survey, STARS is Sustainable Tracking Assessment and Rating System. That's on the left of your screen. The 4 categories under the STARS survey are listed. The WPI score is in the center column, and the average of about 70 other institutions is in the right-hand column of that slide. You can see that WPI has outperformed the average of all of those 70 other institutions by quite a bit. The overall score was 58 for WPI, and the average of other institutions was 35. So we really blew them away. The Green Report Card has more easily understandable categories, as you can see. We participated in that over the last 3 years. And you can see in 2008, there were a lot of Fs. 2009, only 1. 2010, we did a little bit better. The overall scores over these years really improved. From 2008 with an average, with an overall score of D- to a C- in 2009, and we were actually pretty happy about that. But when we got the B+ in 2010, well, that was a real that really gave us a sense of accomplishment. We're definitely heading in the right direction here. So this gives you an idea of where we are based on the input of all of the experts here who've been working in their areas to make WPI a more sustainable campus. So with that, I'd like to wrap up the slides and open it up to questions. Anybody? Do we have any prospective students here?
We had one earlier.
Yeah. How was the pizza?
One thing, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering about Haven. I was wondering if the windows were going to be replaced. It seems like there's still some environmental things that can be done with that building.
We're actually in the process this summer. We're going to be doing what's called an FCAP, Facilities Condition Assessment Plan, which is going to be having a team go through every building on campus, roofs, windows, floors, walls, electrical systems, HVAC system, plumbing, and actually doing an assessment of each to provide the board campus. Is very interested in investing into the campus proactively so that we're not waiting for a roof to leak before we replace it, but we know that this is approaching the end of the life of the roof and we replace it at that point. So we're in the process of doing it, and it's going to address issues similar to that at Caven.
Anything else? Yes?
My question goes to Mr. Karskauskas. So I'm wondering what's your thought about, let's say, reusing cups and I don't know, plates and other stuff like in Campus Center. Do you think that's viable and it's worth implementing?
The use of reusables like China silver, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's a good question. We probably 5 years ago, we actually instituted China and silver. And we were hoping that we would see a reduction in cost in addition to it being the right thing to do. We actually saw our cost of disposables go up. But as we talk about sort of next steps about, I think Liz had prompted us to kind of think about what we could do next. I think it may be a good time to reintroduce that again, possibly in the retail. We have gone to the use of sustainable products as part of a company initiative. It doesn't cover everything. Silverware, recyclable silverware is difficult because it melts if it's too hot. So I think it actually may be a time now that the condition may be more open to it, utilizing that. We saw pretty quickly things being thrown away, as much as we had a separate segregated area for China and silverware to be handled and then re-washed and reused. A lot of times those were ending up in the trash. So I definitely think it's an option that we could consider, especially seeing that we've got a little bit of ways to go to get into that A category.
There's also the need to consider and balance the amount of fresh water that would be consumed in order to provide reusable, the chemicals and the electricity and there's a cause and effect. There isn't always just one simple black and white solution.
Yes.
I was just wondering on that. At Clark, we end up having silverware that's actually made from potato starches. Is that something that WPI would consider, or something along those lines possibly?
We're actually in our use of disposables in catering or in retail. We actually are using those, but they do have a challenge. They don't hold up real well. If you've had a bowl of soup you'll see that sort of droop down. So
especially potato soup.
But yes, that's currently something we're using.
Yes.
Mr. DeMauro, how much did it cost you to get those lead points in terms of percent? How much did it add, and how many years did it take to pay off?
It varies. Some of the points are things you would do anyway. The fact that we had a lead accredited professional working on the project gave us a point, and the architect that was working on it was a LEED accredited professional, so it didn't cost us any more to get that point.
Were you talking about construction of a new building?
The design and the construction. Some materials we used were a little bit more expensive. Some are things we're using anyway. They're building more and more materials with recycled content in them. The sheetrock that we used was made from recycled gypsum, and it actually didn't cost us any more. And we found out from the contractor that was using it for the first time that he went through a lot of razor blades in using the drywall as opposed to other projects, and that meant that it was stronger. We ended up with a stronger building at no additional cost. Other things, you get into certain mechanical systems and electrical systems, and those things add additional costs. The green roof, for example, on East Hall, that was above and beyond the cost of a roof, because you have to put a conventional roof on first, and then you put the roof on top of it. But we got a $100,000 donation from an alum and trustee who's in a civil engineering business and was looking for an opportunity to create a green roof. So the cost for that was...
say the markup for the green certification is minimal?
I would say probably 3 to 5% of the project cost was additional because of the green features.
And how many years did it take to recover that?
It varies. Part of the we received $150,000 back from incentive programs from National Grid and NSTAR for using and specifying some specific electrical and mechanical equipment because it uses less.
So it's a blend of new materials and programs?
Yep.
Offsetting?
Yep.
Yes.
As a student here, the thing that I have noticed that most confuses me as far as being green, and also annoys me for other reasons, is the textbooks. I mean, I still buy a lot of textbooks every term. I still barely use any of them, and I still notice that rarely do they get recycled effectively. We have the used book system, but a lot of them don't make it into that. And a lot of the textbooks are available online or in PDF form. Also, professors still require paper handouts for things that clearly don't require paper. I was wondering if there's some kind of initiative or perspective on that, trying to move in the direction of e-textbooks and electronic submission of homework whenever possible.
I don't have an answer for you, but we will bring the question that you raised to the President's Task Force on Sustainability and see if there may be an answer there. Christine, do you have any sense on ebooks and the proliferation of them on campus?
Well, there are some faculty who are using their WPI site and they're linking into books. Course textbooks in general and engineering categories are not available online in a library way. We cannot purchase them through the library, but students can purchase them through the textbook vendor as they would a traditional textbook. But the bookstore is maybe a way to work on providing more electronic textbooks, because the library cannot provide course materials to students in the form of textbooks. But some faculty are getting around that by linking to articles or linking to other texts that are online, that we have 80,000 ebooks or something available, but they're not textbooks per se.
Seems like it would be good if there was some kind of overall initiative to try to get professors to find out if the book was available online when they assigned it. Try to find books that were available online instead of, or PDF form instead of only in hard copies, and get kids to buy those instead.
We'd be glad, the library would be glad to help with that initiative if faculty are willing to get on board with it.
I took a course through the consortium, and there were no textbooks. It was all electronic.
Any other questions? Yes.
Just one quick non-engineer question, or any of the friends actually. So I've always wondered whether it's beneficial to build underground buildings in terms of saving for cooling and heating. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Fred, that's probably a question for you.
There are pros and cons associated with it. There are certainly some environmental issues, pro and con, but there's there's all kinds of advantages and other things that need to be considered.
I mean, one thing that comes to my mind when you start going underground is a lot of the green buildings are using daylighting, natural ventilation, and they find that when you have that kind of a working environment, you have a more productive employee, because we didn't live in caves for 5 million years. So most of our time was running around the plains, I guess probably avoiding tigers. So our evolution is we like the outside. And I was at a building in Seattle. It was total daylighting, all automatic ventilation, and it was during the heat wave in Seattle. You might not know if you're not on the West Coast, but they had almost 100 degrees in Seattle, which is like people were dying. But and I was in the building at that time, and I really felt this maybe like a euphoric feeling. It felt really nice to be in a building. It feels nice to be in this room, with all these lights. Mm-hmm. And it felt nice for me to be in that building that had all around me was open. They had girders up there that had holes in it, so you had much more lighting, and it was just the whole environment. And it was 80 degrees inside there. People that were working in there, I'm not sure exactly how euphoric they were, because I was on a tour, I was visiting, but so that's like what Fred said. Well, there's pros and cons, and there's the idea of going down in subfloors, and the heating and cooling should be less. Plus, you're going to get the radiation of the geo heat, just if you're below 10 feet. So there's a lot of positives, but the negatives would be, I don't know if we evolved to live underground.
Just a quick question or comment, Liz. Do we do anything at orientation with our students to educate them on what we are doing, what Joe's doing in the dining services? Or, I mean, there's a seminar that they can take on sustainability, but in general, if we get them in and tell them to shut the lights off in this room. I mean, I use this room all the time. I never tell you to shut the lights off, and it really makes. So, I mean, do we do that type of education?
It's been a work in progress. The first year that I started doing anything with sustainability, we kind of missed the launch with the students coming to campus. Last year we did have part of NSO on sustainability. Professor Kruger gave a talk. We had a table at the NSO activities and the student activities fair. We had a table for the student green team, and so we started to get a little bit more visible to the student groups, and I expect that to only continue. With that, thank you very much for coming. Thank you to the panelists.